David walked to the bank with Emma, but the big doors were locked tight. A sign hung on the door. Closed until further notice. David frowned. That's strange. Banks don't just close like this. Emma held his arm nervously. What if they don't open again? They stood in silence as people gathered around. Some banged on the glass, others shouted for answers. But the doors stayed shut. A man in the crowd whispered, "If the banks are closed, that means no money for anyone." His words spread like fire. People gasped. A mother held her crying child tighter. An old man shook his head. David felt his chest tighten. This is bad," he muttered. What no one knew was that this moment was only the beginning. The closing of the bank doors was like pulling a thread from a sweater. Soon, everything around them would start to unravel. And when money disappears, the world changes faster than anyone can imagine. The next morning, David checked his wallet. Only a few bills were left. Emma searched her purse. Nothing but coins. "Don't worry," David said, trying to sound brave. "Maybe the banks will open today." But when they returned, the doors were still locked. A bigger crowd had gathered. Angry voices rose. Some demanded answers. Others prayed aloud. An announcement came from a loudspeaker. All banks will remain closed until further notice. Please stay calm. Instead of calming people, the words filled them with fear. Shops began to refuse money. "What's the point of paper?" a storekeeper said, "if the banks won't take it?" Emma looked around in shock. "David, without banks, how will people buy food? Pay rent? Live their lives?" David had no answer. He saw children holding empty bags near a grocery store. People were already fighting over bread. For the first time, David realized this wasn't just about banks. It was about survival. By the third day, the city felt different. Streets were noisy, not with cars, but with people shouting. Everyone was desperate. David and Emma entered a small bakery. "One loaf of bread, please," David asked. The baker shook his head. "No cash, only gold, silver, or trade." David's jaw dropped. "Trade for bread?" The baker pointed to a man offering apples in exchange for bread. Another woman gave her necklace for 2 loaves. Emma tugged on David's sleeve. "We don't have gold." "What do we do?" David pulled out his watch. "This is worth something." The baker eyed it, then nodded. "1 loaf." Emma held the bread close as if it were treasure. Outside, hungry eyes followed them. David whispered, "Don't show it." People might take it. The city was slipping into chaos, and it had only been 3 days. At home, David turned on the TV. The news was grim. Banks everywhere were closed. Governments promised it was temporary. But people didn't believe them. Emma sat by the window watching neighbors argue. Some shouted about debts, others about jobs. Trust was crumbling. A knock came at the door. Their neighbor, Mrs. Carter, stood outside. "Do you have food to share?" "I'll pay you when banks open." Emma's eyes filled with pity, but David shook his head. "We barely have enough." Mrs. Carter left slowly, her face pale. Emma whispered, "She has no one." "What will she eat?" David rubbed his forehead. "If we start giving away food, we'll starve too." The hardest part wasn't the hunger, it was the loss of kindness. People who once helped each other now locked their doors tight. The bank doors weren't the only ones that had closed. Hearts were closing too. Night fell, but the city did not sleep. David heard shouts outside. He peered through the curtains. A group of men were smashing a store window. They carried bags of rice and cans of beans. Police sirens wailed, but when the officers arrived, the men scattered into the dark. Emma gasped. "They're stealing food." David nodded grimly. When people are hungry, rules vanish. Later that night, gunshots echoed in the distance. Fires burned in the market area. David and Emma sat close, holding hands. "Will it spread here?" Emma whispered. David didn't answer. He was thinking about their dwindling supplies. They had 2 cans of beans and half a loaf of bread left. The city was no longer safe. And soon even their home might not be safe. "Emma," David said the next morning, "we can't stay here. We need to find food and water before it's too late." Emma's eyes widened. "But where?" "It's dangerous out there." David packed a small bag. "We'll go to the edge of town. Maybe farmers still trade." They walked carefully, avoiding large crowds. Along the way, they saw shuttered shops, broken windows, and people sitting hopelessly on the sidewalks. At a corner, a man blocked their path. Food, water? I'll trade. His smile was crooked, his hands shaking. David pulled Emma back. No, thank you. The man's eyes darkened. You'll regret it. They hurried away, hearts pounding. Finally, they reached the farmland. A farmer stood by his gate holding baskets of potatoes. Gold or tools only, he said. David offered his last silver ring. The farmer gave them a small sack of food. It wasn't much, but it meant survival for a little while longer. Back home, David and Emma cooked a few potatoes. The smell filled the room, warm and comforting. Then came a knock. This time it wasn't Mrs. Carter, it was 3 men. We know you have food, one said firmly. Emma froze. David stepped forward. We have nothing to share. The men pushed against the door. David struggled to keep it shut. Finally they left, muttering threats. Emma's face was pale. They'll be back, David nodded. We need to be ready. They moved the furniture against the door. Every sound outside made their hearts race. The city was no longer about neighbors helping each other. It was about who had food and who didn't. For the first time, David wondered, would they even survive this storm? Days passed. Food grew scarce again. David and Emma listened to whispers in the street. Some people were leaving the city. Where will they go? Emma asked. To the countryside, David said. Where land still grows food. Emma bit her lip. Should we go too? David looked around their small apartment. The empty shelves, the boarded door, the silence of a once busy city now broken by gunshots at night. Yes, he finally said. If we stay, we'll starve or worse. But leaving was risky. Roads were blocked. Gangs controlled some paths. And yet, hope lay beyond the city limits. That night, they packed what little they had. Blankets, water, and the last potatoes. Tomorrow, David whispered, we begin our escape. Emma squeezed his hand. We just have to make it. The morning air was cold as David and Emma stepped onto the road. Others were walking too. Families, children, old men with tired eyes. Everyone was searching for safety. Along the way, they saw abandoned cars, looted shops, and burned houses. The silence of wealth was replaced by the noise of survival. A group blocked the road. Food or money to pass, one man demanded. David stood tall. We have nothing, the man stepped closer. Emma clutched David's arm. Just then, an older woman in the crowd shouted, Leave them! We're all suffering. The man hesitated, then waved them through. David thanked the woman. She smiled faintly. Kindness is the only thing that will keep us human. Those words gave David strength. Even in the darkest times, a spark of hope still burned. At last, after many days, David and Emma reached the countryside. Fields stretched before them, green and alive. Farmers worked the land, trading food for help. David breathed deeply. We made it, Emma smiled weakly. It feels like another world. But their journey had changed them. They knew the truth. Banks may hold money, but people hold survival. One farmer welcomed them. Work with us and you'll eat. David and Emma nodded eagerly. It wasn't riches, but it was life. As the sun rose, David thought about the locked bank doors. They had started chaos, hunger, and fear, but they had also taught him the greatest lesson. When the banks close, the real wealth is in food, skills, and trust. And in that new dawn, David and Emma chose survival, not by money, but by hope.